Good morning, everyone, and the $10,000 is true. And Bob wears a lot of makeup, just so you know. He doesn't look all that great. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and really grateful to follow Gordon. If any of you are not working with Gordon, I would suggest that you do. He's incredible at what he does, and his group does an incredible job at forecasting. We are customers of his as well. And we've found his numbers to be very dead on. And as we look at transformation and as we try to find advertisers in our markets to be able to work with, we find that his numbers are very, very solid. So that's just a plug for him real quick if you aren't working with him. I think when Cindy asked if I would come speak, she was hoping to get Clark Gilbert, who was our CEO. I'm the poor man's Clark Gilbert, but I will tell you this, which she didn't know. 10 years ago, I actually left the corporate world, and with a business partner of mine, I actually bought a business which consisted of 22 hearing aid clinics throughout Utah, Arizona, and Idaho. So I actually do know something about the Yellow Pages. I was your customer for several years. Those of you who know anything about the industry, that market is always looking in the Yellow Pages because the demographic is older and it trends that way. So hopefully I can maybe bring a little bit of insight to what we've done from a transformation standpoint, as well as I've tried to pepper this a little bit with my thoughts with regard to your industry, having been a client of yours as well. So I hope that that works out like I would like it to do. So let me just really quickly set the stage for you on who we are, Desert Digital Media. We're located in Salt Lake City, Utah. And our mission is to be voices of light and truth and knowledge, reaching hundreds of millions of people worldwide. From Salt Lake City, Utah, that's hard to reach hundreds of millions of people with our newspaper, the Deseret News. That's hard to do with our TV station, KSL. The only way that we can reach hundreds of millions of people worldwide, clearly, is through digital. And so I'm a digital advocate. And that's what I want to share with you today is some of the things that we've done to be able to transform our business. Now, let me show you some of the results that we've had over quite some time, over the last 5.5 years, of driving more and more reach to these hundreds of millions of people worldwide. You'll see some numbers here that indicate over 22 million unique visitors on a monthly basis, over 100 million through our social media channels, and 850 million ad impressions on a monthly basis. Now, we're the largest local media website in the nation, KSL.com. We have a top 20, in fact, I'll show you the site here. We have a top 25 newspaper website as well. We are not the New York Times. We are not Gannett. We are not one of these large national players. We're at best a regional player, but we've found a niche that fits really well for us. It's helped us. But the truth of the matter is it all comes down to transformation and what we've tried to do to be able to get ourselves in a position to reach these hundreds of millions of people worldwide and to drive revenues through all of those charts that you saw from Gordon where media is declining in many different ways and new media is coming up. So what I'd like to do is kind of help you understand what we've done from a transformation standpoint. Any of you who have read The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen may recognize some of the thoughts here. Clayton's information in that book is really what has driven a lot of what we've tried to do to position ourselves as disruptors. So in The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton talks a lot about the incumbents in the market. So you have your incumbent, be that HP with their laser jets, be that AT&T with their phone service. You can fill in the blank with whoever the incumbent is in the market who pretty much owns the market. Somewhere along the line, though, there comes a disruptor. So it's inkjet technology versus laser jet. It's telephone versus telegraph, sorry about that, or mobile versus telephone. Whatever the case may be, there's disruptors that start way outside the market there. Their product isn't what your product is. They don't have the same quality you have. Maybe they're charging a lot less. Maybe they are searching for different customers. They start somewhere outside your market and you feel okay. But then they start to grow and they get closer and closer to your market. And then they start to take some of your market away. And the difficult thing about that is this little part right here in the center where you have this displacement. Suddenly you've started to lose some of your market to these folks who started way outside of your market and didn't have anything to do with what you were doing. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't think about, and Clayton talked about this in The Innovator's Dilemma. That little bit of displacement there, okay, I get that we lost a little bit of our business, but they forget about that entire green circle that just grew outside the incumbent. The net new growth that came from disruption. Now look at the size of the market versus just that blue circle before. Now it's the blue and green circle because something came in and disrupted the market and caused the entire market to grow. Now, because I live in the newspaper and the TV world as a disruptor, I think this quote really puts into context what disruption is all about. Newspaper has always looked at it as something that was to be lost versus something that was to be won. That's the difference there. When you look at what happens with disruption, you are being disrupted, there's no doubt about it. But there are more and more dollars that will flow through into the market. Now, Gordon gave the example of $5,000 of digital spend, and the advertiser said, well, I'll still pay you $20,000, I'll just take $5,000 away from directory and put it into digital. I get that, but overall, there are more dollars in the market now because of disruption, but there's also more fragmentation, and that's a little harder to deal with. You saw one of Gordon's slides that looked similar to this, and this is the newspaper industry. Take a look at the fact that almost $65 billion at the height of the newspaper industry. And then you see a sharp decline. And you see a little bit of red, which is the online portion of the revenues of the newspaper industry. It still has grown, but it grew out and above and is declining at the same time. And then you take a look at mobile and what's happening with mobile that's displacing that. So what I hope to share with you today are just some thoughts with regard to how we have handled disruption. We're a regional media company. We're not national. We are closer to you if you're in smaller markets than we are if you're in larger markets. We're DMA 33 in Salt Lake City. So I hope to help you understand that a little bit, but let me put in context with that something that we learned from Gordon, which really informed what we did when we created Deseret Digital Media. This is a chart that Gordon has, which is a scatter graph of the DMAs along the bottom axis, 0 to 200, and the percentage of local interactive percentage of their business, which is digital. And he calls the green zone the area where they are above 40%, and you'll notice there are very few dots there. What that says is, all the way on the left-hand side, in the very small or in the very large markets, there are some that are above 40%, and even in the very small markets, there are some which are above 40%. But the key to this is everyone, 100% of those who are in that green zone have completely gone disruptive. They've created a separate structure, a separate physical location, a separate P&L, a separate sales team, separate management organization. They've done everything they can to separate themselves from the incumbent, the blue circle, to become the disruptor, the green circle. That's what we've done, and that informed what we did, and I'll tell you what we've done. Now, we are disrupting newspaper, we are disrupting TV, we are disrupting radio. We're probably disrupting Yellow Book a little bit, but that's not a focus that we have. We focus on our core media properties. We happen to have, as I said, a TV station, a radio station, a newspaper station, or newspaper station. But we created a separate entity which would compete against all of those, intentionally trying to disrupt ourselves with the intent of two things: ensuring that the incumbent business could stay as strong as it could, and that the disruptive business could grow as strong as it could as well, thus growing the blue and the green circles and trying to grow the market in general. So, I want to talk about Transformation A and Transformation B. Transformation A is the fact that your incumbent business, the blue, needs to do everything it can to survive. Everything it can. Get costs out. Come up with new products. Do whatever it can. Transformation A says, I take everything that I have in this business and I try to drive it as best I can. Transformation B says, let me get a disruptive business up and running and do everything it can to grow and to thrive, but it will work at the expense of Transformation A. So as you see here, you're going to reposition your existing business around a job to be done that's core to what you do. What is it that you do and you do really, really well, and that you can continue to do well? As I said, you got to try to get costs out. You got to try to drive your products as best you can. Then you're going to have a disruptive business that is going to be a separate entity that's going to do everything it can to compete against Transformation A. It's going to have separate structure, as I said. You saw Gordon's slide there, separate management, separate sales, everything else. These two teams are going to compete one against the other with the intent of hopefully strengthening both businesses. And then you create what we call exchange teams between these two that share best practices and so forth. But Transformation A is the Deseret News in Salt Lake City. It's a print property, and that's what they do all day long, is they work on print. You have DeseretNews.com, which is the disruptor, which is the digital side of it. And they work on the digital side, everything on the website. And they don't, for the most part, share employees. There is a shared newsroom because some of this news has to come out very quickly in both of these two, but it's a separate organization. Transformation A and Transformation B. That's what I want to talk about for the rest of the time. So let me give you what I think are 7 steps to digital disruption. These were the 7 steps for us, 7 of the steps. There's many more steps, and they may or may not be steps that work for you, but what I would ask you to do is not just look at these and say, tried that, been there, done that, it didn't work. There is a time for every one of these to work and a way for you to do them, and I'll try to do the best I can to articulate how we've made those work. So the first one for us was you have to have some digital DNA. Sorry, I went too far. You have to have some digital DNA. When we created Deseret Digital Media, we didn't simply say, let's take some newspaper folks and let's take some radio and TV folks and let's put them over here. That's not going to work. That's what they've done their entire time is Transformation A. They've been newspaper reporters. They've been newspaper managers. They've been radio sellers. We brought in separate folks with a digital DNA from these types of companies who think, eat, sleep, breathe digital. In fact, this is a picture from one side of our business where the digital team sits. Open floor plan, touch screens in the wall. Everything about it has a very new media feel to it. It's not an old media feel, because that's how these people operate. So the first thing is you need to have digital DNA. You need to get folks who understand that and who come from that background. Second of all, this is something that you do very well, focusing on the long tail. If you're not familiar with the term the long tail, Chris Anderson of Wire coined this term. It's what you see there, the very long tail out to the right there, with regard to this. All the way to the left on that axis is how many people spend a whole bunch of money, and then how many people spend a very small amount of money. Most in the newspaper and TV arena, most of the sellers won't call anybody who doesn't spend at least $1,000 a month. Okay? I got to get in the car, I got to drive, I got to spend some time, I got to take them to lunch, I got to do whatever. And if they don't spend at least $1,000 a month, it's not worth my time because I got to meet my quota. That makes perfect sense. But what that means is somewhere in that long tail, you leave a lot of money on the table. Now, because I owned a business and was called on by my Yellow Pages rep, and I didn't spend all the way to the left, I spent more to the right, you'll understand that because you've been in that world. Long tail businesses, the small to medium advertisers, need a lot of help. Okay, so the 2 guiding principles for us are, the number one, the SMBs are overwhelmed and they're undereducated about digital spend, not about their business, not about traditional. They're undereducated about how to spend on digital, where to work, how to work, and so forth. And they have the spend, but as you heard Gordon say earlier, it is absolutely about the ROI, because it's a two-edged sword. We preach this all the time. With digital, we can measure and manage a lot of things, but because that's the case, you have to fight for the dollars a lot more, because if it's not working after a month or 2, they're going to pull that spend. When I had my Yellow book, after I bought it, they're not coming back for a year for me to renew, and if it doesn't work in the year, I'm not going to pull my spend because I've already spent it. But from a digital standpoint, if after a month or 2 it doesn't work, I will pull it. So they have to focus on an ROI, and you have to keep that in your mind. And therefore, what we've done is created a separate sales channel. Right now, you have most likely sellers who are calling all across that spectrum, large businesses to small businesses. Maybe you've had a handful of folks who have just focused on SMBs, and that's great. That's half of the way there. But let me tell you what we did. We created a separate channel, an inside sales team that doesn't have any windshield time. They don't have to drive. They don't have to take people to lunch or play golf with them. They simply work over the phone to close sales with products that are as good as those all the way on the left-hand side with folks spending tens of thousands of dollars. But we've gotten the cost out. We've kept the cost down, and we've driven revenues. In fact, let me show you what it looks like for the last 5 years with our inside sales team. This is year over year over year. See the green line, January of 2010? That first month, I took 4 folks and created an inside sales team. They were not driving. There's no windshield time. And they were not given a list. They started from scratch. In fact, they were told, here are the folks you can't call on because they're protected. Here are the folks that the outside sellers call on. You can't call them. January of 2010, $4,000 in revenue. Take a look at how it's grown from there. Now it's doing $400,000 per month in revenue. I'm DMA 33, okay? I'm not New York City. I'm not Chicago. You can see that's about a $5 million run rate with an inside sales team selling digital products. It's not print, it's not TV, it's not radio. Year after year after year, month after month of growth. Because we've focused simply on the long tail, and we have a separate channel that sells to those SMBs. We're not worrying about the big stuff, we're worrying about the small stuff. In fact, just to put it in context, the $400,000 per month is an average order value of $240. That's the average what these SMBs are spending, $240 to get to $400,000 a month. You need to create a separate channel, and in my opinion, you need an inside sales team that doesn't have all of the constraints and all of the costs that an outside sales team has. Number 3, we call this what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let me tell you the story. So when we started DDM 5.5 years ago, as you can imagine, the TV, radio, and newspaper folks were not all that happy with us. They didn't like the fact that we came in to start this separate business. Because how they saw it was, what do you mean I can't sell well enough? Why do you have to bring in other folks to sell? The VP of sales of the TV and radio team was not all that happy with us because we were bringing in new sellers to sell digital, and his folks had been selling digital. So in a meeting that we were sitting down and talking, we kind of walked through it and said, okay, let's understand this. You have a TV team and a radio team, and they're separate, right? Yeah, they're separate. Well, why are they separate teams? Well, because you don't understand. TV is very, very difficult to sell. It's about GRPs. And you have to look at the overnight and everything else. It's very, very difficult, so you have to do that. Well, then why do you have a radio team? Well, because radio is difficult in a different way. They've got drive time, and they've got different spots and dots and so forth. So we have to have a separate team. We've got radio over here. We've got TV over here. You see where I'm going with this, right? He's making my case for me. Then why do we not have to have a separate digital team? That's no big deal. Because my legacy guys, they can sell that. They can sell radio and digital. They can sell TV and digital. They can sell newspaper and digital. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you feel like your sellers need to focus on a specific product because it's difficult or because it takes a long time or whatever the case may be, that doesn't mean that you can simply lay more on top of them. I've never met a seller who said, give me less products to sell. They always want more products, but then they only sell 10%, 20% of them, right? They're always looking for more, but they can't focus on what they need to sell. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and what that means is this. Digital is not easy to sell, and it can't be an add-on. You have to have a team that focuses on specifically what they're doing from a digital standpoint. Now, we've been fighting this battle for 5.5 years in the industry with folks who are saying, you know what, legacy sellers, they can sell both. My newspaper guys can sell digital, my TV guys can sell digital, and many people present a pretty convincing case. But for the most part, where we've seen folks break out a traditional legacy team from a digital team, both businesses have grown. Simply because they're focusing what's good for the goose is also good for the gander. Management, sales training, everything else, you have to be able to put those resources around it. The fourth one, let me tell you the story here. In Salt Lake City, we have an advertiser, Ken Garff Auto Group. They, in fact, have auto dealerships all around the nation. They may be in one of your markets. They're in the Midwest as well. Ken Garff is really great, and they're a good customer of ours. We've had them for years buying newspaper, buying TV, buying radio. We put together this separate digital team. But Ken Garff was on the protected list, and so the digital seller couldn't call on the Garff folks. The traditional person did. It was a TV seller. So she was calling on Ken Garff, and she was doing what she could to sell TV, which she had sold really well, and digital, which she had sold okay. And our CEO said, listen, I need to go with you so we can sit down and understand what's going on with Ken Garff. Because they're buying a lot of TV and very little digital, and their percentage of digital of their total spend is very, very small, and that doesn't make any sense when you take a look at the numbers that are going on in the industry. So as they sat and as they talked, our CEO was there with this seller. They're talking to the CEO of Ken Garff, who's there as well, and finally he goes, wait a second, wait, you're talking about the guys on the 11th floor, the guys that buy digital. The TV seller said, I didn't know there was an 11th floor. I didn't know anybody up there did digital. She was calling on the person who placed traditional. She was working with the folks who did what she did. There was a separate group up on the 11th floor that was placing tens, if not hundreds of thousands of digital dollars And we weren't getting any of that because she was working with who she knew. We've seen the same thing with agencies. Within agencies, you know this, there are print buyers, there are radio buyers, there are TV buyers, there are digital buyers. Sometimes they're not in the same office, sometimes they're not on the same floor. The parable of the 11th floor is this. You need to know that who you're working with may not be the right digital folks. That might be the traditional legacy business, if that makes sense. Oftentimes, it's a different team or if it's a different agency. Many times, the legacy sellers don't know who they are, don't have a relationship with them, don't know how to get a hold of them. But Gordon mentioned this earlier, and I think you know this as well. It's not about the product that's being offered. It's about the solution. It's about what we can bring to the table. And if we're dealing with a traditional buyer, they're not looking for a digital solution. They're looking for a traditional solution. So the parable of the 11th floor says, you need to ensure that a digital buyer gets a digital seller. If you've got a digital buyer with a traditional seller, it doesn't work. You have to have a digital buyer and a digital seller. This number is the percentage of time that we want our digital folks thinking about legacy. I don't want digital folks thinking about newspaper selling or about TV selling or about radio selling. I want them focused on one thing, and that's digital. 0% of the time, they should be thinking about anything else. Okay, let me help you understand our business a little bit better. KSL.com is the largest local media website in the nation. We're blessed to have this property that went with free classifieds before Craigslist was around. Now, you may remember 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah. Even before that, 1997, we had gone with free classifieds. Now, think about that. We had gone with free classifieds, which meant that we were disrupting our own sister company, Deseret News newspaper, which obviously every newspaper out there has had most of its revenues from job listings, from auto dealers, and from straight advertising, and within that, classifieds as well. So we started this free classifieds business. We disrupted ourselves. We're actually the only DMA in the United States that beats Craigslist. We beat them by about 40%. That was a fluke. We were early to the market. But let me help you understand now what that's done for us. We have, as a media company, an opportunity to not be tied just to display advertising. If any of you spend any time in display advertising in the digital world, you'll know banners don't do all that well. They used to do pretty well. The industry average for banner ads is a 0.08% click-through rate. 0.08. Ask yourself this. When's the last time you clicked on a display ad? I live in that, and I hardly click on them, right? Now, there's some things that we're trying to do around better targeting and better relevance and so forth, but we've been blessed to be able to have a property that has classifieds built in, and we call that marketplace. 50% of our revenue comes through marketplace. It doesn't come through traditional, quote-unquote, traditional digital advertising, display banners, and so forth. So what I would suggest to you is this. What can you do in your market to get on the marketplace side of things and not just be in the display ads? Let's be honest. A yellow book ad and a display ad, pretty much the same, right? They're trying to get a call to action out to someone to get them to do something. Maybe it's branding for consideration. Maybe it's direct response to get someone to call or whatever the case may be. But display ads in digital and a yellow page ad, very similar in what they do. We've been able to differentiate and get into marketplace, which isn't reliant upon digital display dollars. And I'll help you understand what that is. But the other thing is this. Mobile is going to lead the way in marketplace. Think about all the things you do on your mobile phone. I buy a lot more things for my phone than I do for my desktop, even for my iPad than I do for my desktop. So take a look at the number. Online commerce is the orange line. Online advertising is the green line. Both going up. That's great. Look at the difference in the total dollars and look at the slope of online marketplace. Take a look at mobile and look at the slope on that one. Again, both going up. It's great news. Look at the gap between the two and look at the slope on mobile commerce. If you can find a way to be involved in mobile commerce, taking a portion of the commerce dollars instead of charging for a display ad, you have an opportunity to tap into this. We've had that opportunity. So let me tell you what we're doing in Marketplace. So in this case, our cars section on KSL.com does 50 million page views per month. That's a lot of traffic. We actually beat Autotrader.com and Cars.com in our market with our version 2 product. Our first version product didn't do it. We were losing dollars to Autotrader.com and Cars.com. But we redesigned the product, we disrupted ourselves, and we now have more revenue and more listings for cars than those two. We've done the same thing with jobs. Our version 2 actually disrupted ourselves. We now have more job listings than Monster and Career Builder combined for our market because we've disrupted ourselves. We're redesigning our homes site and hopefully working with the MLS. The MLS is coming to us and saying, hey, we'd like to put our inventory on there. Think about that. The MLS should be the incumbent, but they're coming to us and saying, we'd like to put our inventory on your site because you've got greater breadth and greater reach. We do what we call featured ads, which is another way that that's kind of a display, but we are able to target it a little bit better. We build a deals platform, think Groupon, think Living Social. We outlasted all the other deals platforms in our area because we disrupted ourselves. You see the last two there. We built a local directory, and yeah, it competes against you all. It's doing okay. We're still growing over time, but we know the market really well, and we're building this product to work for advertisers, but to work for users as well. And then finally, we built Utah.com, which is a separate site, which is all about bookings, trying to drive money from bookings and not from display ads. So you need to make sure that you're taking a look at what you can do from a marketplace standpoint. Number 6, you need to embrace mobile. If you haven't embraced mobile, it may be too late. Mobile is eating the world. Mobile is absolutely eating the time spent online. But if you've seen all the different slides out there, here's what's really interesting. Mobile leads from a digital standpoint in time spent, but it does not lead in dollars spent. There's a mismatch there. Eventually, those dollars are going to come flowing through mobile, but until that happens, mobile is a lower CPM for us. It doesn't do all that well from a performance standpoint for advertisers, but there will be a shift. And when that shift comes, we need to be ready for that. So I'm going to show you the order of magnitude, what we face as a media company from mobile on the next slide here. But what we're trying to drive is mobile-ready revenue, things that work on a mobile screen, that don't only work on a digital or a desktop, and that aren't reliant upon display advertising dollars. I'll show you an example of that. So let me show you how this math works for us. Think about the desktop. We have about 100 million, or if we were using 100 million page views as the example, we have 4 ads per screen on our desktop. We do a $5 CPM, so that's a $20 revenue per 1,000 ads. 20 times 100,000 is $2 million in revenue. Okay, that's not bad for 100 million page views. Let me show you what mobile does. Same 100 million page views, but I can only put 1 ad out there. I can't fill up my screen with ads on a small screen. That's not a good user experience. I'm not getting $5. I'm lucky if I'm getting $2. So now I'm getting a $2 RPM. I'm getting $200,000. Take a look at the difference there. That's an order of magnitude different. If I do nothing else and I exchange 100 million page views on desktop for 100 million page views on mobile, I'm losing 90% of my revenue. That doesn't work. I can't be a business that loses 90% of my revenue. So you have to embrace it, and you have to figure out ways that you can be mobile ready. And I'll show you in this last one here what we've done for that. You may have heard of native advertising. Because I'm in the media world, I spend a lot more time on that. You may or may not be spending any time on that. If you're doing anything from a digital standpoint, you should think about it. It's also known as sponsored content, promoted listings, paid search, whatever the case may be. It's things that are not display advertising, but that monetize for the media company or for the vendor. So BuzzFeed. If you ever look at BuzzFeed, BuzzFeed does no display ads. Now you can say what you want about BuzzFeed. They've got a cat section, they've got an LOL section, but they also have some true journalism as well. And they pay the bills, by the way, 150 million unique visitors per month, 150 million unique visitors. And they do that with no display ads whatsoever. They do it through native advertising, sponsored content. That, for us, works very well on the mobile. If you think about, if I do a sponsored article on KSL.com and I put 4 ads around it, When you see that same article on KSL Mobile, I can't see those same 4 ads. I can't do that. I can't put 4 ads on the screen for my user. So we can't rely upon display advertising. But we don't charge for display advertising with our native. We charge $2,500 per article. And you'll get all of the ads that you can get, but we call it mobile-ready revenue. It works on the desktop. It works on mobile. Here's what it looks like for us. Oh, before I do that, let me mention this. So on KSL.com, we do 13,000 page views per editorial article. That's not bad. But our sponsored content does 16,000 page views. We do a 23% lift in our sponsored content. What that tells me is we've figured out how to write content that our users want to read. And by the way, we'll share socially to bring more users in. We do better with content that's written for advertisers than we do for courts and crime and feel-good stuff. Because we've figured out what the user wants to read and what they'll want to share. That's what BuzzFeed does and why they've done it so well. So if you take a look at this is sponsored content, okay? This all happens to be from the desktop, okay? So sponsored by Xfinity, sponsored by a personal injury attorney. It's very visual. It's very list-driven. It's content that users want to see and that they want to share. And it works from a mobile standpoint. So what I'm telling you is this. There's a green field out there. There's a lot that you can gain. It goes back to that newspaper quote. Yeah, you can think about it that there's a lot to lose, but there's also a lot to win. The blue dot, the green dot grew the market. Just because you're the incumbent, just because you have the market doesn't mean you need to protect. You need to embrace the digital way and ensure that you can, in fact, disrupt yourselves. So let me sum up. Dual transformation. Transformation A says do the very best you can to drive Transformation A business. Our newspaper, we should want to have it last for 100 years. Do everything we can. Get the costs out, write the best stories, do whatever we can for Transformation A. Transformation B, we need to disrupt ourselves. We need to find something from a digital standpoint which monetizes, which meets our users' needs, which meets our advertisers' needs. That's what Transformation A and Transformation B are. That's why we've created a separate company, Deseret Digital Media. This is from the Harvard Business School. If you take a look at the percentage from a newspaper study of content that's not in print and the audience penetration, take a look at that. The more content that's not in print, the higher the penetration. That makes perfect sense. Not everybody's reading your newspaper. Not everybody's looking at Yellow Book. You have users out there who are going to find content somewhere. What are you doing to make sure that content is in front of them no matter where they are? iPad, iPhone, desktop, wherever that may be. We've developed new channels. Take a look at the left hand there. Our revenues from 2009 to 2011 went up, but our percentage of the legacy channels went down. Less and less we relied upon legacy sellers, newspaper sellers, radio sellers, TV sellers, to get our digital revenue. So we've grown revenues while we've had less of a reliance upon those folks. This is the last slide, and then I want to show one last thing. And then any questions, or I don't even know where I am from a time standpoint. This is the most wonderful slide. I'm most proud of this slide. I know it's very busy, but just take a look at 2009 is orange, 2015 budget is blue. Take a look at month over month, year over year. We've been incredibly blessed to have performance that has gone up month after month after month and then starts over again the next year, year over year. The only way that we've done that is because we have disrupted ourselves. We have been Transformation B. We have built a separate business, separate management, separate P&L, separate sellers, which has ensured that we have grown revenue for our entire company, being able to sustain the newspaper, the TV, the radio as well. So let me close with a video. I hope this plays. If it doesn't, that's okay, but I want to just put it in context.
Some people like to climb mountains. I like to build planes in the air.
I grew up wanting to be on a wing, wanting to be up this high.
Sometimes the temperature up at altitude will reach 60 below. It's brisk, it's refreshing.
You never know what you're going to come across up here. Canadian geese, mallards,
owls. These people back here, that's why I come to work. That's why I build airplanes in the sky.
We're not just building a plane here. We're building a dream.
job.
I get a lot of thanks up here. When I look over there and I see that little kid, I look in his eyes, that's all the thanks I need.
So that's what it feels like for us. We really feel like we're having to build it on the fly. And by the way, I didn't take any time to tell you about all the things we failed at. We failed at a lot of things. I will not leave you thinking that everything we've done has turned to gold. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've put out products that didn't perform all that well. We've had to reinvent ourselves. But it feels that way, like we're building it on the fly. And I hope this helped you in some way. The time looks like I don't even have time for Q&A, but thank you very much. Take a couple? Okay. So any questions real quick that I can maybe answer? Yes, sir. Hang on, the microphone police are going to get you.
When your different groups approach customers, since it's not protected any longer, is it still all branded under the main company name, or is each thing branded under a different name? And is there any, if they are the same, is there any resentment from the customer, like, you know, geez, you're bringing this and you're bringing this and bringing this?
Thank you. That's a very wonderful question. So yes, KSL TV, KSL.com, Deseret News Print, DeseretNews.com, KSL Radio. Yes, it's all branded exactly the same. We haven't chosen to make the digital product a different brand name. And frankly, that's because we want the power of those brand names that's been in our markets for 60 years. When I call and say it's Todd calling from KSL.com, I want you to drop everything because you know it's KSL.com. So that's the good side. You mentioned something that's very difficult, okay? We've had advertisers say, really, dude, you're going to send 4 people through my door, 1 for print, 1 for TV, 1 for radio, 1 for digital? Yeah, we are. Because they're going to serve your needs better in each of those 4 than if I send 1 person in there. I had an AE who said, listen, if you do this, they're going to stop spending. If you break all this out, they love me. They love what I do. They're going to stop spending. Guess what? They didn't stop spending, okay? This is a great seller, and I'll be honest with you. The truth is, any of us could get hit by the bus tomorrow. They're still going to spend anyway. When we broke it out, everybody's budget actually went up because there was more dollars to spend. It's a great question. Anyone else? Okay, thanks so much.